I want to thank all of the people that came out today. I want to thank all the people that came out to share that love, that message of love, not hate, to fight back on racism, to fight back on anti-Semitism, to fight back on the white supremacists that were coming to our city, on the Nazis that were coming to our city. I want to thank everyone that came here today. I want to thank everyone that came here and expressed themselves in such a positive, great manner today.
That's Boston Mayor Marty Walsh yesterday. After a potentially turbulent situation in his city, Boston remained peaceful. An estimated 40,000 counter-protesters turned out to oppose that free speech rally by some conservative activists. This, of course, just a week after the deadly and horrible violence in Charlottesville, Virginia. Now, all eyes are on the president and the message that he will send to Americans during his upcoming rally in Phoenix on Tuesday. Joining us to talk about that is Republican Congressman from Pennsylvania, Congressman Charlie Dent. Congressman, good to see you. What more do you want to hear from the president, whether he says something when he addresses the nation tomorrow night on Afghanistan, or whether it will come at that rally in Phoenix on Tuesday?
Well, Eric, thank you for having me on the program. I think it's important that the president clearly in an unambiguous way denounce this type of racism and anti-Semitism of these white supremacists that we've seen in the last few days. That's very important. Once he is able to do that, then I think it's important that he turn around and start talking about the issues that we must address in Congress. I'm pleased that he's going to be talking about Afghanistan imminently. He's going to have to talk quite a bit about tax reform and infrastructure. He has the biggest bully pulpit in the world. He needs to use it on constructive items. Like these types of agenda items I just outlined. We have a very big month ahead of us in September dealing with not only the debt limit, but keeping the government funded, children's health. And I think it's important for the president to be focused and disciplined on these very substantive policy matters.
Well, but by your answer, you just don't think he has said enough. He certainly hasn't, in your view, come out strong enough by denouncing these groups, even though they've had several statements to that effect.
Well, the first response on last Saturday was inadequate. The statement on Monday was much better, but seemed a bit forced. And then came the Tuesday debacle with that news conference. And so I think it's important that they continue to clearly denounce this type of racism. There's no place for it. We're the party of Abraham Lincoln. We can simply not tolerate any neo-Nazis or Klansmen who are trying to infiltrate the ranks of our party. So I think it's important to say that. Now that's you can move on and get on to these other big issues.
In fact, you tweeted after the news conference, POTUS must stop the moral equivalency, again in capital letters. White supremacists were to blame for the violence. I mean, how do you think we will be able to go on beyond this? There are going to be more protests planned over the next few weeks, next weekend also, so this likely in some way will continue.
Well, we just saw a nice protest, I should say a peaceful protest in Boston, where there were people out there who were, advocating making a free speech statement, and then you had the counter-protesters. But everything went well. That's the way this is supposed to be. People are free to express themselves. We should not ever, impede people's right to express themselves. At the same time, these all have to be done peacefully. So I thought Boston was a good example for the rest of the country, for all of us to emulate. So when there are future circumstances where there are going to be some very contentious issues and people making some very incendiary and inflammatory statements, that there is a proper way to handle that kind of gathering, and we can do it without violence.
And you just talked about, the policy plans that are in front of us. You've got infrastructure, tax reform. You've got the budget coming up in September and October. Let me read you what the Wall Street Journal editorial says about all this today. Here's what they say in part. The larger question is what Mr. Trump has learned from the failures of his first 7 months. He seems to want less internal feuding, better communication, but his ill-considered tweets and unplanned riffs blow up any communication planning. He still traffics in false claims and divisive rhetoric, and that's against his allies. He is in greater political peril than he understands. That's pretty stark and blunt. How does the situation get corrected? What does the president have to do?
Well, that editorial, I think there's a lot of good advice in there for the president. Well, General Kelly, I think everybody widely respects him and admires him and believes that he will try to bring some focus and discipline to the White House operations. I believe he is doing that. Now, the question is, can he bring that focus and discipline to the President of the United States? That is another matter. But I think the gist of that editorial is on target. I don't think it's very productive for the President, to go after, say, Republican senators, Mitch McConnell or Jeff Flake or Lindsey Graham. These are people he will need to help advance some of these important agenda items on tax reform, infrastructure, and other items. So that's where I guess there's concern that some of the tweets and other public statements are simply counterproductive to advancing an agenda where both Republicans in Congress and the President agree.
He needs to put some wins on the board, and for that he needs you guys to cooperate and to be along with him with that. Congressman Charlie Dent, always good to see you. Thanks so much for joining us on this Sunday afternoon.
Hey, thanks, Eric. Great to be with you, too.